It's really how do we have that collaborative environment? So I think having a healthy community, PTAs, parent communities that we work really closely with, and being able to pick up the phone to call. When it comes to students and any issues, whether it be things happening off campus, arguments students are getting into, any inappropriate messaging, again, I think it comes down to those healthy relationships we have with our students. Do students feel safe sharing? And do we respond when a student shares a concern? And we have a very proactive staff who, when we hear things just starting, we're able to have those conversations with students and find out what's going on.
You're listening to the smartsocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. This is our District Talk segment where we interview district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday shine online. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Hi, I'm Gary Waddell, Superintendent of Santa Clara Unified School District here in the Silicon Valley. We have about 14,000 students across 30 schools.
My name is Patrick Gittisriboongul. I am currently the Assistant Superintendent of Technology and Innovation with Lynwood Unified School District. Lynwood Unified is located in the city of Lynwood in LA County. We support about 12,000 students across 12 elementary, 2 middle, 2 high schools, continuation high school, and an adult school.
My name is Greg Gazanian. I'm the Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer for the Arcadia Unified School District. We have about 9,000 students at 11 school sites, and we are in the suburbs of Los Angeles.
How have you been successful in increasing parent engagement to help keep students safe on social media?
You know, one of the ways that we've engaged parents is through awareness. We also have a green light, yellow light, red light policy that monitors different levels of access. And certainly those are levels that we can implement, but also that we give parents the opportunity to say, I'm comfortable with my child having this much access, whether it's full access or limited to vetted resources. So that's one way, but really, to me, it's engaging in these conversations and helping parents explore the issues and helping our children be informed and educated consumers and users of technology.
Well, I think we do a combination of things. We offer parent university training. And so being able to really bring in our parents and explain to them the type of tools that are out there, the type of resources that they can access is one way of doing it. But really making sure that we curate a lot of resources for our staff and our students, as well as our parents is important as well. Making sure that things are provided in multiple languages, making sure that it's inclusive in a way that the folks that feel that they're not a part of it are actually intentionally brought in to some of this work is definitely something that we're really focused around doing.
I think there's a few ways that we've engaged our parents to help keep students safe on social media. One is that we have digital safety nights. We've had a number of those over the years where we've engaged with our PTAs, PTSAs, just other parent groups, and then we've said, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you concerned about? Here are some tips. Here are some things to look out for when it comes to students online. And we've really engaged in those conversations proactively with our parents. And also, one thing that's really helped us a lot in building that bridge to home is at the very beginning of our school year, many of our principals, if not all, let parents know that really student safety and really a healthy, productive school year comes from that partnership between the school district and the parents. So when we call the parents, ideally, it's not, hey, your student's in trouble. It's how can we partner to have the best outcomes for your student. And when we join together in that way, when it's built as a collaborative relationship from the beginning, we find it easier to partner with parents if they have concerns or if we have concerns in having that open line of communication.
Are there any stories that might come to mind about any social media incidents you've been able to get in front of or avoid by being proactive?
I'd say that we've been pretty successful in getting ahead of it through our communication channels, and we have a very robust communication platform and network, both to students, to parents, to families, to communities. And so I think staying ahead of those things, both instructionally in terms of when we launch a technology, what are the issues related to it, as well as keeping our community informed, and then being responsive when an issue does come up in a proactive, supportive, and immediate way helps us stay in front of that.
I think with anything, social media can prevent fights from happening on campus, can prevent arguments from happening. It can really help us get out in front of any type of threats that our schools are going to get or receive calls on, whether it's fake or accurate. It's something that we take into consideration. We want to make sure that the safety of our kids are our utmost priority. So getting out in front of it, being informed ahead of time is very much an aspect of how social media is really helping us.
When it comes to being proactive and getting in front of social media issues or challenges, I'll answer broadly, and that is, it really helps us that we have really positive relationships with our parent communities, with our students. We can engage around those things. And this isn't so much a student story, but I think a lot of these community Facebook groups, oftentimes it's not malicious, but parents will have an idea that they've heard something. I heard schools are closing at, an hour early all week because of this. And it turns out, well, maybe we have one minimum day at one school, but it just kind of spins out of control. And one way I think we get in front of that, again, is having those really positive community relationships where we can let our PTAs know, we can let our parents know that, hey, here's when our schools are actually closing. It's not every day, and just being able to correct that information. And I think that comes from working really hard to be interest-based with our staff, with our students, with our parents, meaning it's not positional. We're not, it's us versus them. It's really how do we have that collaborative environment? So I think having a healthy community, PTAs, and parent communities that we work really closely with, and being able to pick up the phone to call. When it comes to students and any issues, whether it be things happening off campus, arguments students are getting into, any inappropriate messaging, again, I think it comes down to those healthy relationships we have with our students. Do students feel safe sharing? And do we respond when a student shares a concern? And we have a very proactive staff who, when we hear things just starting, we're able to have those conversations with students and find out what's going on. But thankfully, it doesn't often come to this, but we also have a very productive relationship with our student resource officer in our local police department. Again, we hope it never gets to that. Usually it does not. But having those relationships and those community partnerships in place has been really effective in getting in front of some of these challenges that I know a lot of folks face.
What would your advice be to other educators and administrators to work together to create a culture of digital safety and responsibility in their schools?
To create a culture of digital safety and responsibility, it really, to me, is about us being thoughtful, working to educate our students to not be afraid of new technologies when they come online, but to look at them in terms of the opportunities that they provide us, as well as being open to any risks that might be associated. And just really having a thoughtful, deliberative approach to that, engaging our kids. They're some of our best thought partners in this work when we're entering into these conversations. So I think having those conversations, being thoughtful, deliberative, being intentional about our use is our best strategy.
I think with culture, to me, culture is dictated by the actions and behaviors of staff and students and faculty and parents. And so building a culture is really making sure that we instill the type of beliefs, if you will, right, that we have as an organization. And so when it comes to us, a culture of safety is really the utmost importance. So being able to educate our parents on the tools, the threats, the dangers of social media is an aspect. Being able to again, see what the perils and promise, if you will, of all of these different tools that we have out there is definitely another aspect. And then again, the communication piece, right? Also making sure that we communicate with our community using the tools that they're used to. So everyone's on social media. So for us to meet them where they're at, that's a critical component as well. So being able to use social media in positive ways to model the type of behaviors that we want in our culture is an aspect as well.
One of the best ways that we can work together, administrators and educators, just to build that community of safety, again, is just open communication. If you have a concern, if you have a thought, let's talk about it. Years ago, we had a group of teachers who were very interested in technology. This was at the very beginning of a lot of these technologies. I think AOL Instant Messenger was still being used. This was early on. But we found early on, one of the most important things we could do during these meetings is say, if anyone has a concern that's just on their mind, like you don't have to wait, you don't have to raise your hand, just throw the flag in the air and say, I have a concern and let's talk it through. And I think, a lot of times folks are worried that they're the only ones in the room to have a concern. They're scared to speak up. They don't necessarily want to be the squeaky wheel or however you want to say it. But I think having that open communication between educators and administrators where they can share their concerns and we can work together on solutions is just absolutely essential. Having a space and a time and permission to bring those concerns to the forefront. It doesn't mean everyone gets exactly what they want or the position or the exact response that they want, but it means that you can always bring it and work together. Also say, we have a really positive relationship with our teachers union. We meet monthly to hear any concerns that are coming up and we can work together on solutions. And again, I think having that flow of conversation and that relationship has been really productive in looking for solutions, not just in internet safety, but in all areas of the school district.
What are your 1 to 2 biggest social media concerns for the future?
I think our biggest social media concerns are really around safety and responsible use. I certainly hear, as many do, about fears of technology being used for ill purposes. And I think sometimes we're hesitant or reticent to use technologies that really can be transformative in children's learning and lives. And so while we need to be thoughtful about safety and responsibility, we also don't want to be afraid to explore new technologies and think about what that looks like and how those uses can be transformative for our kids.
Well, number one, I think AI and how social media content is generated, and whether it's artificial or whether it's someone that actually typed that out, is one of my biggest concerns. Secondly is dealing with automated social media posts, fake accounts, things like that allow us to really change the narrative in certain situations. So I think it's important, again, as an organization, that we share our story, we tell our story, we leverage social media that allows us to really promote what we're doing as an organization.
One to two of my biggest concerns for social media for the future is I think disinformation is a big one. I think we've seen what happens online right now when people will post things that aren't necessarily true or that haven't been vetted. And I believe with just the advent of and proliferation of AI technologies, it's just going to become more of a challenge for us to face. So very curious about how we'll do that. I have high confidence, maybe to a fault, that we're going to find good solutions to these challenges. But, pictures you can't trust, quotes that, you can't trust. And we used to tell people, well, triangulate, look at the different sources, doesn't make sense. But again, I think we're going to need to continue to hone that. The other is some of the depression we see on folks who spend a lot of time online. More and more research is coming out that, spending that amount of time is not necessarily emotionally healthy. And that's not just for students, that's for adults as well. I think if you rewind the clock on our society 100 years, 200 years, 300 years ago, there's really kind of this divide where adults had seen most of the needs that the young folks have because society had been the same for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. In other words, you may not be the best at hunting or at blacksmithing or what, but you knew what needed to be done and you had kind of a framework for how to do things in a healthy way. We're learning together, and I think that's fairly new to us, meaning adults, teachers, admin, myself. We're learning along with students, how do I use social media in a healthy way? If the last 5 years have shown us anything, is that adults don't have the corner market on, productive, healthy, pro-social conversation online. It's something we're all trying to figure out. So I always couple my concerns with a hope in that I think this level of social interaction in a digital space has lots of opportunities. I think there's some really cool things you can do with it. And we're going to need to be mindful about how it's shaping us as humans. I think it's always a really interesting paradigm that we create technology to help us, and sometimes it ends up shaping us and turning us into something different. So I think we need to be very mindful of that.
Funding is difficult across the board and across the country. What advice would you give to other districts to secure funding to create the resources that parents need?
Our approach to funding has largely been around partnerships. I think my experience is if we can really make a strong case for what we need and the impact that it will have on the lives of children and youth, then we can find the funding either through internal collaboration and partnerships as well as community-based partnerships.
Well, for funding, because in California we have restricted and unrestricted funding, and so being able to leverage federal, state grants, nonprofits, community-based organizations, public-private partnerships is definitely a critical aspect. Here in Lynwood, we're able to really address digital equity by doing a public-private partnership, and we're able to bring in fiber throughout the community to increase the internet access and to provide competition that we would have never seen before. And so being able to leverage that and being able to communicate that message to philanthropists, to nonprofits is how I would approach it.
Funding is always a challenge. One thing that we found internally is there are a lot of really good resources out there. We're at a time where I remember when we used to have to generate all of our own worksheets and our own flyers. we're at a time where there's just a lot on ironically or not ironically, different social media platforms. There are great teacher communities and educator communities where you can download those resources. I think that's a great start. In terms of, funding itself, sometimes it's just a matter of prioritizing it. If we truly believe that this is important, that there's a cost to not doing it, sometimes it's about finding the money. I'll tell you, in our school district, we have a fund set aside for new initiatives, and that's all it's for. We call it our R&D budget. It's for grants for teachers who want to try new things. It's for departments who want to try new things that make things better. And I know it's easier to say than to do, but I would really encourage any school district out there who wants to try new things, who wants to develop this curriculum and have that available, and to be more agile than a lot of times we are as school districts, to set money aside for responding quickly. So again, I think there's a lot of really great resources out there that can be drawn upon. But in terms of money itself, if you can set some money aside from your general fund or from a more specific funding source if possible, having the money available, just knowing that those things are going to come up has been really helpful for us.
Thanks for listening to our smartsocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. This was our District Talk segment where we interview school district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday launch into their future by shining online. This episode was brought to you by our smartsocial.com VIP program. It's called the Very Informed Parent Program, which helps you engage your students with teen-led video lessons. Stay one step ahead with our premium parent newsletter and discover hidden features on trending apps on teens' phones and our 54+ live parent and student-friendly events every single year. You can click on the link below to chat with one of our team members if you want a free pass to our VIP program to support your community with our smartsocial.com resources. And if you're a district leader who has a success story, we would love to feature you on a future episode. You can click the link below to reach out. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a great day.